Hi, I'm Jo Lindsay from Monash University. I'm the president of TASA. So what does sociology offer our society today? Sociology looks at the big questions of how society works and how broad social forces shape our lives and the pressing social issues of our time. We produce knowledge that's in the public interest. We think about how society could work for the common good so that everyone can flourish. Most people do sociology because they want to understand the way the world works and they want to make a difference. Sociologists have a broad and a generous approach to knowledge. We share ideas with other disciplines, we collaborate with other disciplines, but our core focus is on the social. Because contemporary societies are so complex, there are many specialist areas within sociology. This includes health, education, gender, migration, popular culture. We have 21 thematic groups within TASA. Australian sociologists have always engaged with social movements, with social policy makers, or they've worked in government departments themselves. Sociologists have always engaged with the media too. So sociological ideas and research have been incredibly persuasive, and our ideas have been mainstreamed. And often these ideas are collective and they take many years to have traction. So we have had and we continue to have an impact in the following areas that have shaped Australian society today: in multiculturalism, in understanding the health system and the social determinants of health, in gender equity, families and relationships, work, education, Indigenous issues, religion, youth, crime, governance, poverty, disability issues, and the environment. Sociology is useful for anyone who wants to understand how society works and to make it work better. So, sociology, I encourage you to give it a go. You won't regret it.
I'm Adam Posamai from the University of Western Sydney. What separates a lay person tweeting about a social issue and a sociologist speaking about society? 42 kilometers and 95 meters. Everyone can speak about society. Everyone can have an opinion on everything. Everyone can read the paper, check various blogs and Twitter accounts, and comment on what is happening. Like in sport, almost everyone can run 100 meters. Not everyone can beat a world record, but certainly everyone can do it. But can everyone run a marathon? Even if you're not trying to run under 4 hours, you need a discipline. You need trained skills. You need a different mindset to run a marathon. The same goes with sociology. You need a discipline. You need trained skills. You need a different mindset to understand and report the historical, structural, and cultural context around a social fact to give the fact its due. How much can you see when you run a sprint? Compare this to how much you can see when you run a marathon. The sprint is fast and you see things in a flick of the eye. The marathon calls for endurance and asks of you to see more for a longer period of time. Everyone can be a pop sociologist and run a sprint by making comments on Facebook, for example. But not everyone can be a sociologist and run a marathon by writing a book or a research report on something that requires deep analysis. Sociology helps you to keep the endurance and an attention to detail when understanding society. A sprint helps you to make a soundbite. Sociologists, these marathon men and women, explore with patience and detail the many facets of a contemporary existence. And like police officers who are looking for a clue to solve a crime, we are looking for concrete evidence and robust data to solve questions that are of importance for everybody. But instead of solving the crime, we are looking at social and cultural conditions on how to prevent these crimes. Not as fancy as catching a criminal, but so important on increasing the well-being of so many people who will never know the good deed that has been done for them. Sociologists ask questions that touch us on so many levels. These are, for example, how can we live in a multicultural society and prevent racism? What does it mean to have religion back in the public sphere? How far has the equality between genders gone? How is Facebook changing the way we socialize, and how far are we ready to reveal personal information to the online world? Why can't everyone access health services? How can we help people to live longer? And how can we cope with more people living longer? Everyone can have an opinion on these questions, but not everyone can explore evidence and present them in such a way as to inform not only students at university, but journalists, policymakers, politicians, and all the movers and shakers of our society. I'm not claiming that sociology can make a society a better society, but what I can say is that sociology, without a doubt, prevents people from making society worse. We do our job when we show that society is not what it thinks it is, when we show what people did not see, when we reveal hidden social processes and structures. We are at the top of a field when we give helpful advice and when we provide knowledge and practical applications of this knowledge. If you are not a sociologist and you want to start the race, come and read all the articles and then books and then start doing research yourself. On a thesis first, for example, and then a master or PhD by research. And from there, build your endurance and your research stamina to cross the lines. Sociologists do not necessarily cross the lines in close to 2 hours, but they certainly aim at crossing the line without stopping on the way. In this presentation, I've just run 100 meters. But do come and join us on the remaining 42 kilometers and 95 meters of the marathon and stop your tweet procrastinations. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Wickham. I'm Professor of Sociology at Murdoch University in Western Australia, and I've been asked today to talk about what does sociology offer our society at present. I'll take that to mean Australian society, but I guess one could restructure these remarks in different contexts, but I'll stick with the Australian context. I have to pause a little bit first because there's a bit of me that wonders, productively I hope, about sociology's relevance. And I've been involved in some work with people from a variety of countries. I did a special issue of the Journal of Sociology in 2012 precisely on that theme, and I invited my contributors to think critically about just that issue, and I was very happy with the results. Happy in that the people had a lot of criticism, so that might not be all that positive for the outcome of this, but I hope it is. Basically, they and me went through a range of historical issues that looked at what sociology was doing in the late 19th century, early 20th century, in various countries, particularly England, the United States and Australia, and in the US and Britain, sociology was much more actively involved with governmental initiatives in attempting to improve various aspects of the local society. Whereas in Australia it floundered somewhat. It had those ambitions, but it never gained a foothold for itself. Now, in a way, we took those late 19th, early 20th century prognostications, well, they can be prognostications back there, whatever the opposite is, post-prognostications, and we then put those into a context of, well, what might sociology do today to perhaps regain some of the relevance that it had, as I say, mostly in Britain and the US, or and gain that relevance in Australia. Our various perspectives, I can't say there was any overriding theme. My personal involvement was that I thought sociology was no longer treating seriously enough the very notion of society itself. And with that, I suggested that it might be better for the discipline were it to look seriously, or look more seriously, it already does it, at the foundations of society laid by a particular form of government back in the 16th and 17th century, whereby in the countries that I was talking about, obviously not in all countries, but in Western Europe, the US, Britain, Australia, we have a level of stability and a level of peace which I think we owe to a system of government formulated in the 16th and 17th centuries. And to me, that's too easily forgotten in a notion of society. We don't look at those simple foundations. Others in the volume that I edited talked about similar themes, but perhaps much more recently. Contributors like Paul de Gay talked about how different attempts to understand society within organisations, for instance, might need to be beefed up. Brian Turner talked about how much more relevant sociology was in Britain in the 60s than it is today. Stephen Turner, perhaps similar on the US in the early part of the 20th century and how different that is today, how it's been perhaps captured by groups that have too small a focus. So gathering, and Kirsten Harley, one of our dear colleagues in Australia, she spoke about the same sort of thing in Australia. But if I put it all together, I'd be starting to wonder about, as I say, how can we take a pretty simple and I think a very important notion like society and use that as a lever for promoting debate about, society more broadly and aspects of it. Now, I think I may have been invited into this project because I've been contributing a number of essays to the new, now relatively new, online newspaper, The Conversation. And a lot of my work there is, again, attempting to talk in pretty much everyday terms. I try to speak in a language that's more broadly understood about various aspects. A lot of my pieces have been about sport, some have been about government itself, some have even been about the nature of the university. But in all of that, I've been trying to say, well, sociology actually has quite a lot to say about society if you can treat the notion of society with a bit more clarity. One of my other concerns is that sociology may sometimes think about society in a fairly, should I put it, it's a bit empty. It's like the notion can be anything, and I've always said, well, if it can be anything, it can also be nothing, and that's what tends to happen. So I've been trying to get people to think about it, give a definition to it, and then focus their work in that regard. So that, I suppose, would summarise what I hope sociology could offer at its best towards society today.
So my name is Suzanne Francois. I'm from the University of South Australia. So the question we've been asked is, what does sociology have to offer society? The way I'd like to answer that is to say that I think what sociology does well and does at its best is offer us an opportunity and really good ways to understand society, and particularly to find ways to understand and to work through ways if we're interested in social justice in particular, and equality and social transformation. For me, I think that what sociology has is the capacity through both its theory or theorising and its methodologies. And the other thing I'll talk about a little bit is that we could, unlike fiction, which also gives us a whole range of ways to understand society in all its multiple diversity and colour, what sociology does is to also provide everybody and offers everybody an opportunity to do some of this work as well. Not all of us can be great writers and creative writers, but I do think that with good training, good study, good teachers, all of us can engage with the theories that have already gone before us, but also in developing new ones. All of us can engage in doing the research, utilising the methods that sociology has developed to enhance and develop our own understandings of society and work towards social justice and social transformation. Now, the example I'd like to give in relation to that is a project that I've been involved with, a multidisciplinary project with 3 other people, and the question was, why are there so few women engineers? And when we came to look at this question, what became clear was that really it was the sociological that was going to help us answer this question. The engineer who was on the project was clear right from the start that while she had the absolute knowledge and understanding of the meaning of engineering, how to answer the question about why so few women isn't within the remit, if you like, of engineering as a discipline. And the same applied for the other scholars that were involved. In the end, it was sociological research methods and then sociological theory, informed, if you like, by feminist theorising, that really enabled us to, I think, do really rigorous, careful research into this question. We were able to do quantitative and qualitative research, but what we were able to come up with was the thing that sociology can do is to draw in, if you like, draw on the strengths of the philosophers, the epistemologists, for instance, to draw on the feminist theorists, and to draw on those social researchers and activists who've all been trying to tackle this question about why there's so few women in so many male-dominated areas. Just to say, what we've come up with, we've managed to recently publish. And one of the things we were able to establish with that was that engineering, as everybody well knows, is a male-dominated field, but so are many other fields. Many of those have changed. Medicine has changed, law has changed. Engineering as an equally important profession has not changed. It's still, women are 7 to 8% in the industry, in spite of it being a very diverse area of work. And what we were able to do was to develop an idea about the way gender, if you like, is denied in that question. So we asked the question of engineers themselves, and I think it's a sociological method that, in a sense, set us up to ask this question. When we asked engineers, why do you think there are so few women engineers? In their classic engineer way, they were puzzled by that problem, and they had to say over and over again, I don't know, I don't know. I wish you hadn't asked me that question, and then they'd start speculating. What we were able to do was take that data, take those responses, take the quantitative data and the qualitative data, and pay really close attention to the answers, the texts of the responses that we'd been given, and analyse them with a sociological frame, coming up with the idea that there was a sexual politics at stake involved in this question, and that contributed to a strongly entrenched politics of ignorance in which gender is denied. So people would say, it doesn't bother me if it's women or men, but also a kind of willful ignorance about that, of not wanting to know. It allowed us to pay attention to the way family is brought onto the stage. So people would the taken for granted assumptions about family, which sociology points us towards not taking that for granted. So we were able to bring how did the sexual politics of the family come into play in their answers. And the third dimension was one that I think Australia has experienced quite powerfully over these last few years, but the way that I guess it gets represented in the answer where people say, it doesn't bother me whether an engineer is a woman or a man, meaning gender doesn't matter, but also recognising that when women do come onto the engineering workplace, they have to prove themselves over and over again. We found that women are constructed as disadvantaged. They have to prove themselves, they have to overcome their gender, even when gender doesn't matter, gender is denied. The women themselves participate in that too. So it's those kinds of ideas, I think, that we were able to draw together in an argument that I think will contribute to trying to make changes that will benefit that area of work, but also will contribute to our understanding in many domains of social life about why do these inequalities persist. That's one important question. But the other one that sociology, I think, really contributes strongly to society is, and how might we go about working with others to challenge those inequalities, to transform those inequalities in ways that are to the benefit of an overall society. So just to reiterate, I think that what sociology does is it has now very powerful theoretical tools. It has terrifically innovative and creative methodological tools, and they are accessible. They in themselves anyway, they're accessible. How our education system works is another matter, but they are accessible and available to all of us to be able to make use of.
Okay, I'm John Homewood. I'm Professor of Sociology at the University of Nottingham in the UK, and I'm also President of the British Sociological Association. I'd like to characterise the challenge of sociology, the challenge that sociology poses to society, by using a phrase from the great late French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu. He said that what sociologists do is see structure where others see agency, and agency where others see structure. What did he mean by that? Well, we face very serious issues of inequality, poverty, and other concerns within modern societies. And the great tendency within public policy and within public attitudes is to see that inequality and poverty are a consequence of the actions of the poor themselves. It's a way of blaming the victims and saying that they are some way deficient in their attitudes or deficient in their motivations, and therefore not like others who are more successful. And what sociology would do is to see, well, the issue is not agency, the issue is not to blame the poor for their attitudes, but to understand their lives in the context of social structures which deny them opportunities. And then what Bourdieu says, that then we can reverse this situation and say that frequently when we talk about inequality, people then say, oh, well, some of these inequalities are the consequence of natural attributes, that is, that the structures of inequality are seen as normalised. And what a sociology does is say, no, these structures are social structures, and what is socially produced can be changed through agency. So in that way, sociology sees structure where others see agency, and agency where others see structure. Agency to change society, and change society in ways that will better realise issues of social justice, compassion, and other positive and inclusive social values.
Deborah Lupton, Department of Sociology and Social Policy, University of Sydney. Now, when I think about what sociology can offer society today, my big thing at the moment is digital sociology. So I'm really interested in the fact that how we conceptualise the social world, how we conceptualise the social itself, and therefore how we conceptualise sociology is all implicated in the digital. And I think sociologists have a lot that we can say about digital technologies, digital data, big data, the way that people use digital technologies. And those technologies are now so part of everyday life that we need to be exploring how they're affecting people, what use people are making of them, how they might be resisting their use, what kinds of data are being collected as they use these technologies, and what sociologists can do to make sense of all these activities and practices and resistances, and how we ourselves as sociologists might be affected by the use of digital technologies in our own world, and the implications for how we might teach and research and practice as sociologists.
I'm Raywin Connell. I'm at the University of Sydney. I think of sociology as the democratic science above all. If we're serious about democracy, if we mean by that the capacity of the people in a society to control their own fate, to make collective decisions about what really matters and the way we're going to be in the future, then we need solid and reliable knowledge about the nature of the society we're living in, how it's come into being, what its conflicts and possibilities are, where it might go in the future. And that's really the subject matter of sociology. So we're concerned in sociology with social reality. Often we're critical of the kind of glossy images of the world that are presented to us by advertisers through the mass media. We're interested in how people really live their lives, what the issues are that they are, actually facing rather than being pictured as facing. And that makes us interested in the diversity of people's lives, in the different patterns of conduct, of social practice, different forms of families, different ethnicities, different social identities, and also the different power structures that impinge on people, the nature of the state, the nature of corporations, the changing character of economic power, where are the power centres in the world, and indeed how our world is changing through global world-scale social changes. All of that's the package, if you like, in sociology. We don't claim to have the only truth about the world, but I'm in sociology. I've been in sociology now for 40 years, and it's basically because I think the most important things we need to know about for a democratic life, for a democratic society, that knowledge is found above all in sociological research. So I think of sociology as the social science that has, more than anything else, the role of providing the knowledge base for the collective choices and decisions, the shared choices that we have to make about our future.